Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's message from the truck. It's good to be back with everyone, all of our St. Augustine family and friends. It's the midst of allergy season. If you hear me sniffling or coughing, trust me, it's not COVID. It's these silly allergies that have decided to present themselves. Slightly different angle this morning compared to the angle that I usually sit at. Usually I've got myself nicely squared in my driver's seat looking out the window. This time I'm on a bit of a different perspective, a different angle, and I'm going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But before I get to that, I wanted to share with you a couple of announcements for the community. First of all, congratulations to the entire community, all of our friends and all of our neighbors and everyone else who supported the drive-through food drive last week. Just an incredible experience. We gathered 1,400 pounds of food and just shy of $1,200 in donations for the Unemployed Help Center. So that gives us a grand total of almost 4,000 pounds of food that we've gathered through this pandemic, as well as a substantial amount of cash, getting up towards the $5,000 or $6,000 number as far as cash donations that have been received. So thank you to everyone who took part in that, who came out and said hi. It was good to see so many of you out, and good to see everyone's smiling faces and all the rest of it. So thanks for being part of that. This week will be Facebook Live tomorrow morning for church as we gather again, this time for the 5th Sunday at Easter. The trivia night that I had planned for this week ran into a couple of bumps and bruises along the way, but it is still planned for next week. So more details will be coming out about that on Monday or Tuesday in an email. It should be a lot of fun. It's just an opportunity for us to play some trivia, and we'll see if we can do that on Zoom, actually, I think is what we're going to use, which means that you got to get your interest in right away because we're limited to 100 participants. So we'll see what that looks like as we get closer to it. For tomorrow, for worship tomorrow morning, as we gather for Facebook Live, we will be coming to you from St. James once again. And Jonathan will be here sharing his music, and Chris will be here sharing his technical expertise, as well as Reverend Charlotte and myself sitting in the chancel at St. James, and Father Robert, Reverend Robert, and Reverend Elise coming to you via Zoom from their own church buildings. Tomorrow, we're going to touch on a passage of scripture that's usually found, fairly commonly actually, around funerals. The passage of scripture is Jesus letting his disciples know that he is going somewhere, and where he's going they can't follow, and that he is going to prepare a place for them, that in his Father's house are many rooms. So that's a passage from the Gospel of John. I wanted to do this different angle, this different perception of reality this morning, only because when we listen to that passage of scripture, we can very easily get ourselves caught up in our own perception of what that must have sounded like. You know, we live in a world with Google Maps and with all of those other GPS and everything else in our vehicle that tell us exactly where we're going and exactly how to get there. In fact, we'll even tell you how much fuel it's going to take, how long it's going to take. There's so many details that we can get about a journey, whether it's from our vehicle or whether it's from a CAA triptych or whatever else it happens to be. There's always often something that gives us all kinds of information, in fact, more information than we need. For the people that were gathered around Jesus, for the disciples that Jesus was talking to that morning, to be told, we don't know where you're going, how can we possibly follow you? It's a little bit of a different situation for them. There was no paper and pen for Jesus to jot down a quick map for them. There was no directions that he could give him. After all, he was going somewhere that didn't have a go 3 streets down on the south to the south and we're the second place on the right. There were no directions like that Jesus could give. He was giving them instructions on a spiritual journey, not a physical journey. So when the disciples say, we don't understand, we can't figure out how to get there, we can't figure out what you're talking about, we need to understand that they were looking for not spiritual direction, but physical direction. And Jesus was talking about something completely different. As we enter into our conversations tomorrow during worship, when we get into our sermon time, that's, I think, where I'm going to be focusing on is how is it that we can understand a physical direction from Jesus when our entire world is based on a physical direction? How do we get a spiritual instead of a physical? I think if we can change our perspective a little bit, right? I listen to stories that I'm being told about people that had to sacrifice and scrimp and save during times of war when rationing was taking place during the Second World War. I think of people who hunkered down in bomb shelters in London, England, or in Germany, or in France, or wherever else it happened to have been. I think about situations like the Great Depression, where people lined up literally for hours and hours on end just to get a loaf of bread and a bit of butter. I think about people in places that are suffering from famine, places like throughout the continent of Africa, where people stand in line for a bowl of rice and maybe a drink of clean water. I think of our situation today, a challenge where we're stuck indoors with Netflix, Disney Plus, all of our movies, all of our cable TV, our internet, our ability to communicate this way, our ability to communicate through Zoom, our ability to communicate church through something like Facebook Live. I imagine the emptiness and the desolation people must have felt when they couldn't connect to any of that during times, say, of the Spanish flu in 1918. We need to shift our perspective. We need to give thanks to God for what we have received, what we do have, and consider ourselves lucky. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, so I don't want to give away the whole sermon yet. I hope you'll join us tomorrow on Facebook Live as we offer worship once again, and I look forward to connecting with you again. For right now, be safe, be well, and for another message from the truck, keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up. Blessings to you all. Bye for now.